In September of 2019, I was in my first semester of law school browsing the r/lit RPG subreddit, looking for a new series to get into. I came across a comment that said to check out a web serial called The Wandering Inn, saying that it had some of the best storytelling and world building they had seen in a web serial. Now, I love me some good storytelling and world building, looking at you, One Piece, so naturally I had to check it out. Little did I realize that The Wandering Inn would change my life. I will try my best to avoid spoilers as I talk about this story, but if I do, I will put a warning and timestamp to skip to if you'd rather go into the story as blind as possible, which I recommend highly. Also, I will most certainly miss some big points about this story, given its absolutely gargantuan scale, so if I missed anything, please leave a comment below filling in the gaps so any newcomers to this series can get a more full picture of this amazing work. I plan on making a number of videos discussing The Wandering Inn, so I won't get into too much detail here. Take this video as an introduction to the series, and let me know what topic I should cover next. The Wandering Inn is a web serial created by the author Pirate Abba. They began writing it on July 27, 2016, usually releasing chapters twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. The chapter lengths have varied greatly, being as short as 737 words for the first chapter, up to a staggering 34,000 words, generally getting longer as the series has gone on. The chapters can have letters next to them, denoting which character the chapter is focused on. As of the writing of this video, the serial consists of 7 full volumes, with the 8th volume currently being written. In total, there are over 6.7 million words in this series, which is 6 times longer than the entirety of the Harry Potter series. Now, while this may seem daunting, the series is very easy to pick up and put down, making it ideal for reading in short bursts, or binging, which I certainly did. When I first started reading The Wandering Inn, the series was only up to Volume 6, which was reaching a close at the time. I caught up to it in December of 2019, which happened to be right before chapters 6.65 and 6.66H, 2 of my absolute favorite chapters, which I will discuss later. The Wandering Inn is available to read completely for free at www.wanderinginn.com, link in the description. Also, if you'd prefer to listen to an audiobook version of the story, the first 2 volumes are available on Audible, read by Andrea Parsnow. For more information and discussion, check out the Wandering Inn subreddit and Discord, links in the description below. Now with all that being said, let's get started. Volume 1 begins. The inn was dark and empty. It stood silent on the grassy hilltop, the ruins of other structures around it. Rot and age had brought low other buildings. The weather and wildlife had reduced stone foundations to rubble and stout wooden walls to a few rotten pieces of timber mixed with the ground. But the inn still stood. It was waiting. A girl finds this inn and takes shelter inside it. Her name is Erin Solstice, and she is the main protagonist of the series. Erin Solstice is a girl from Michigan in our world, who is transported to the world of the Wandering Inn, dubbed the Inverse by the fandom, and eventually made canon, by mysterious and magical means. Those of you familiar with the isekai genre of anime may either be excited or have already started to roll your eyes, but please stick around for a bit longer. She begins to take care of the inn, where she discovers one of the things that makes Inverse so special. When she falls asleep that night, she hears a voice in her head that tells her she has gained a level in the Innkeeper class. Inverse is a world with classes, levels, and skills. A person can gain levels in various classes by acting in ways that are consistent with the class. An innkeeper will level by taking care of guests and improving the quality of their inn. A warrior will level through fighting and training, and a mage will level through the study of magic, and so on and so forth. However, what makes this particular power system so special is the sheer diversity of the classes. There are diplomats, emperors, throwers, maids, and even courtesans, each receiving skills that benefit their class. Erin, for example, gains the skills Basic Cleaning and Basic Cooking as her first skills. Skills are powerful and diverse in Inverse. With Basic Cleaning, Erin is able to sweep up much more dust with each stroke of a broom, and with Basic Cooking, she gains an instinct for cooking, allowing her to know how to cook things much better than she had before she came to Inverse. Now, while these may seem weak, keep in mind that Erin is still a level 1 innkeeper. Other skills that appear in the series include Steel Cut Sunder, which allows a warrior to cut through steel, creative naming; Calming Touch, which allows a carer to calm their ward or target; Control Pitch, which allows a singer to better control their voice, among many, many others. Skills are what allow the Inverse power system to be extremely flexible, and even within classes, people gain different skills at different levels. One farmer might gain enhanced strength at level 4 or 5 to help them with manual labor, and another might gain a skill that helps their plants grow faster. I think this power system shares similarities with the power system in Hunter x Hunter. People will gain different skills and classes depending on their personality and actions, kind of like how a Nen user can fit their powers to their personality or goals. The power system in The Wandering Inn is one of my favorite power systems in all of fiction. It has a flexibility that is almost unmatched by any other work I've read. There is an equal emphasis on both hard and soft power, with both being able to achieve greatness and glory. Throughout the story, the skills and classes system evolves as more information is revealed, and it becomes incredibly deep. However, I think the greatest strength of this system is how it connects each character to their class, or lack of one, as each character embodies or strives to embody what their class represents. Minor spoiler warning ahead, but I don't think this particular spoiler will detract from your enjoyment of the story. One of my favorite examples of a person embodying their class is Laken Godard. He is a blind, German man from our world who is teleported in near a small village called River Farm. After going through a few events when he first comes to Inverse, he tells a friend the story of Emperor Norton. Emperor Norton was a man who lived in San Francisco, California, who declared himself an emperor after he lost his fortune in an investment gone wrong. He had no land and no actual claim to nobility. However, he did act the part and was treated reverentially by the citizens of California at the time. He even minted his own currency that was accepted throughout the city. When he died, over 10,000 people lined the streets of San Francisco to pay their respects. Laken Godard declares himself an emperor, and either through sheer ego, or as a gift from the system, is granted the class of emperor. He declares River Farm to be part of his domain, and begins to rule over it, lifting it out of destruction and poverty, and turning it into the beginnings of an empire. This is just one example of how incredible the system in Inverse is. In the Inverse, there are a number of fantasy races and monsters that inhabit the world alongside humans. There are drakes, which are a species of dragon-like humanoids with scales and tails. Gnolls, which are like humanoid hyenas that typically live in tribes, but can live in cities as well. Half-elves, goblins, stitchfolk, which as the name implies, are people that are made of cloth that can change out their body parts at will and have a fierce aversion to fire, and dullahans, which are clad entirely in armor that is part of their bodies, and they can remove their heads, among others. Selphids, beastkin, antinium, lizardfolk, don't get them confused with drakes, it's a sore point. Freyerlings and drowned folk are also races that get representation in Inverse. Inverse is a very large world. It is anywhere from 3 to 10 times larger than our world in terms of surface area, yet the gravity of the planet is roughly the same as ours. There are 6 major geographical continents in Inverse, each possessing unique cultures, species, and politics. Yes, politics. This is a very, very dense piece of fiction. There is Israel, Balaros, Chandrar, Turandria, Wistrum, and Rear. Israel is the continent our story begins on and is where a good majority of the story takes place. It has a mostly temperate climate and is split into a northern and southern half by a large mountain range called the High Passes. Within Israel, some major cities include Liskor, the city that the story basically revolves around, as that is where Aaron is located, Palace, a walled city of the Drakes in the south, renowned for its inventions and innovation, Indrazil, the city of adventurers in the north, and Selim, a small city near Liskor. Balaros is a jungle-like continent, home to centaurs, selphids, dullahans, and lizardfolk, among others. Its defining feature are its companies, which are a combination of mercenary army and government. The most notable and story important of these companies is the Forgotten Wing Company, led by the Three-Color Stalker, one of the deadliest rogues on the planet, and the Titan of Balaros, Nirs Astorgon, the world's greatest strategist and inventor of chess. I will talk more about chess later, but for now, just know that in Inverse, chess was only invented recently. Chandrar is a desert-like continent, home to various nations and species with a great desert in the center. There are several countries of importance in Chandrar, with Rhyme and its King of Destruction, Floss, and his 7 most loyal and powerful vassals taking center stage. Other nations include the Empire of Sands, Takir, the nation of beasts, Pommel, the land of martial artists, Rashal, a nation of slavers, and Kelt, the nation of the undead. Terrandria lies to the north of Israel, and is inhabited mainly by humans. It is often likened to our world during the medieval age, in that it is ruled by various kings and nobility in a feudal system. Not much is known about Terrandria as of the writing of this video, but some places of note include Aliandamas, Calenfer, and the Kingdom of Keys. Terrandria is also known for its knights, who belong to various orders. One of the more important orders is the Order of Seasons, which has 4 sub-denominations of knights: Spring Knights, Summer Knights, Fall Knights, and Winter Knights, each with their own specialties and abilities. Wistrom is the Isle of Mages. It is basically Hogwarts, but with much more intrigue and politics. There, races of all kinds send their most talented students to learn magic, except for gnolls. Within Wistrom, there are various factions, each vying for power and knowledge. These factions include the Revivalists, the Isolationists, and the Libertarians, which share almost no features with the Libertarians in our world, among others. Another key feature of Wistrom is its golems, which were created by the Archmage Zelkir prior to his death, or disappearance. It's still unclear. These golems are the workforce of Wistrom, non-sentient creations for the most part, who perform the labor such as cleaning and serving food. However, among the golems, one stands apart: Cognita, greatest of Zelkir's creations and one of the last surviving true stone golems in Inverse. There are a lot of power dynamics in play at Wistrom, so I can't go into too much detail here. But for now, just know that while the current Archmages are nominally in charge of the Academy, Cognita is the true power at Wistrom. Finally, we get to Rear, home of the Blighted King who wages his war against the demons of Hell. I want to save discussion of Rear for another video, but for now, just know that Hell is home to the Antinium, the demons, and the Sleeping God. The Blighted King has waged a war on Hell for over 100 years to drive back the demons and keep them from invading the rest of Inverse. The other continents all send reinforcements and aid to the Blighted King to help him hold the line against the demons, but not all is as it seems on Rear. Now I want to talk about some of the characters and story beats of The Wandering Inn. I can't possibly talk about all of them in one video, so I will only be talking about certain important main and side characters in this video. If you want me to make videos dedicated to certain characters, please let me know in the comments below. Now in this part, I will be leaning more into spoiler territory, so go to the timestamp on screen if you'd like to skip to my final review. Erin Solstice, our protagonist, is the heart of The Wandering Inn as a series. She embodies some of the main themes of the serial, including friendship and acceptance. She is kind, humorous, and intelligent, despite initial impressions. She is known as the Crazy Human of Liscor, and serves as a catalyst for several major changes and events in Inverse. As the proprietress of The Wandering Inn, she takes care of and makes friends with all of her guests, giving them a place to go for comfort, protection, and good food. Additionally, Erin was a chess prodigy in our world. Before she came to Inverse, she played in international tournaments as a child and was one of the best. She wanted to become a strategy game commentator before she was transported. She also has a keen knowledge of Go and Shogi. Her talents become noted within Inverse, with one character even starting the first chess magazine, featuring her games, and she can go toe-to-toe with the Titan, who, as mentioned before, is the greatest strategist in all of Inverse. Erin's best character trait, in my opinion, is how much she cares for all of her guests. They are near and dear to her heart, and she would go to great lengths to help and protect all who come to her inn as a guest. She befriends goblins, which up to this point in Inverse were considered to be mere monsters devoid of reason and thought by the other races. She saves a goblin named Rags from being killed by a member of the City Watch, and as a result gains the skill Natural Allies Goblins, meaning all goblins from that point onwards notice an affinity and inherent trust towards Erin. At several points throughout the series, we see how deeply she cares for her guests, weeping over their deaths and lamenting over how she cannot protect them. However, because she cares so deeply for them, they care for her in return, coming to her aid when she calls upon them. She is one of the best examples of soft power in the series, being able to plan and execute great feats of organization and change by calling in favors from her friends and allies. Erin Solstice is a person whose worldview and attitude I have tried to emulate in my own life, trying to see the best in people and to view them as a person, rather than an ideology or appearance. Props to Pirate for creating a character that inspires me to be a better person. Ryoka Griffin is considered by a lot of readers to be a secondary protagonist, as she has a great number of early chapters revolving around her experience with Inverse. She is a girl from our world as well, being transported to Inverse shortly after Eren was. Ryoka's defining trait in Inverse is the fact that she does not have a class. That's right, in a world of classes and levels which can give a person immense power beyond what they could normally do, she chooses instead to forgo the class system and make her own way. However, this does not mean she is powerless. Instead, her power is her determination to the point of stubbornness. She is the type of person who will look at a situation that many others would shy away from and face it head on. Ryoka works as a runner, which functions as a sort of mail service for Inverse. Due to the vast swaths of land that separate cities and settlements in Inverse, and no form of automobiles to traverse them, information and communication is typically carried by runners from city to city. These runners gain skills that either help them run faster or longer, or carry more weight. However, because Ryoka does not have a class, she does not gain these skills. Furthermore, she chooses to run barefoot most of the time, as she runs better without shoes. Despite her self-imposed handicap, she is fully capable of keeping up with some of the best runners throughout the series through both sheer running technique and later in the series, some magical, non-level related powers she gains through her friendship with the Fae. Additionally, she has martial arts training and can handle herself in a fight, and even helps one of her runner friends attain the martial artist class. At first, she is brash, confrontational, and uncouth, often acting very rude to people who are trying to help her, and she pushes away her friends on many occasions. While many readers, including myself, initially hated Ryoka and her chapters, throughout the story she goes through a very substantial character arc, eventually becoming a very sympathetic character in my opinion. Despite her rough exterior, on the inside she is actually very caring and compassionate, as shown when she delivered healing potions to a team of adventurers under attack by a lich, running through its bombardment of spells and saving the team. She is a very good representation of a type of social anxiety, and later in the series we learn that she may be suffering from a type of depression. She has good days and bad days, the bad days being the ones where she lashes out at others. She is deeply introspective, to the point where she has internal monologues with herself where she analyzes her own behavior and actions. In later parts of the series, we see her try her best to change her mindset and become a more open and sympathetic character. Ryoka is someone I admire, as she is willing to fight tooth and nail to establish herself in Inverse, while recognizing her own faults and working hard to change them. The Horns of Hammerrod are one of the first adventuring teams that we encounter in Inverse, as they are the team that Ryoka saved from the Lich. In the interest of avoiding major spoilers, just know that there are two incarnations of the Horns of Hammerrod, and this analysis will mostly be discussing the second incarnation. The Horns of Hammerrod, a silver rank adventuring team consisting of Saria Springwalker, a half-elf ice-focused mage, Pisces, a human necromancer, who is my personal favorite character, Ivlon Byers, a human warrior, and Kissimver, an Antinium skirmisher. While at first, the Horns do not get along all that well, there is an underlying sense of camaraderie that only grows as the series goes on. They truly do care for each other, and would fight to the end to protect each other and their friends. I think the best way to show what the Horns of Hammerrod really bring to the story is to talk about chapters 6.65 and 6.66H. If you've listened up to this point, I've only done minor spoilers. However, this part until my final review is heavy spoiler territory. If what I've said up to this point interests you at all, I highly encourage you to skip ahead or click off this video, because reading this part of the story is something I truly recommend going into blind. Seriously, it's so good that I cried during and after it. I'm going to give you guys a second to skip ahead to the timestamp on screen at this point. Alright, here we go. So some context before we dive into these chapters. This point in the story is something I like to call the Pisces retrieval arc. Pisces is being hunted down by a team of mages from Wistrom for a so-called crime he committed while he was a student there. This team of mages includes a former friend of his and Saria's, who now holds a vendetta against Pisces. The Wistrom team almost succeeds in capturing Pisces, but they are thwarted by the Horns with some help from Eren. However, after Pisces is released from his captivity, he breaks down in a fury regarding his mistreatment by the world. Necromancy is heavily frowned upon in Inverse at this point in time due to the actions of another necromancer, as Karash. However, Pisces has a true passion for necromancy and chooses to pursue it despite the stigma, as he would rather live true to himself rather than resign himself to be just another mage, albeit an extremely talented one. He curses the world and threatens to destroy it, almost succumbing to his despair and anger, but he is stopped by a certain small, white gnoll, who will be getting her own video along with her mother, who presents him with a wand that he gifted to her. After calming himself down, he goes to his team and tells them the story of his life. I cannot possibly do this conversation justice, as it is one of the most heartbreaking and heartwarming moments in the Wandering Inn, but long story short, he and his team renew their loyalty and friendship to each other. Now in 6.65, the Horns are on protection duty with a couple of other adventuring teams. They are protecting a team of workers who are working near the Bloodfields, which is an area of Israel inhabited by extremely dangerous monsters and plant life. Then Krellers attack. Krellers are one of the most dangerous monsters in Inverse, capable of wiping out entire teams of adventurers. Furthermore, one of the Krellers that attacks is an adult Kreller, which are classified as a gold rank threat, and even then, they are capable of wiping out gold rank teams. These are extremely dangerous creatures, created by the sleeping god of Rear, who have no thoughts beyond consume. Krellers are typically killed on sight, and even other monsters will try to fight them as they are sheer force of destruction. Throughout 6.65, we follow Erin's viewpoint, as she attempts to rally her friends and allies to help the Horns of Hammerod, but an hour passes before she is able to get to the Horns. At this point of the story, we fear the worst. 6.66H tells that hour from the Horns' point of view. We see their epic fight against the adult Kreller, who unfortunately kills many of the other adventurers that were also assigned to guard the workers. As the fight gets worse and worse, more teams begin to run away, leaving the rest to be slaughtered. Pisces himself even runs away, leaving his team to die. However, as he's running away, he runs into his former friend from Wistrom, the one who was trying to capture him. She says, "You're going to run away, aren't you?" Pisces looks back at his team. His team. The team that has accepted him for who he is, despite the fact that he is a necromancer. He laughs, runs his fingers through his hair, and he turns back, saying, "The gods are dead, but I still see devils and demons. And heroes. Their company shamed and changed me. I think I've been happy. I gave it all to necromancy, so if it is my end, come. Rise, for my dearest friends." He goes back to Saria, who calls him a fool for not running away, showing that she cared more about his survival than hers. She tells him to run, but he responds by saying, "I tried. But, how strange. It seems I'd rather die than leave my friends behind." They join hands, with the adult Kreller bearing down on them. Now, I don't want to spoil the conclusion to these chapters, as I truly believe they are some of the best in the series. The other Horns, Ivlon and Kissimver, also have a similar moment, but they'll probably get their own section of a Horns-focused video. The Horns of Hammerod are a fantastic group of characters in Inverse, and they show, as cheesy as it sounds, the power of friendship. This is just a very basic overview of a few characters in the Wandering Inn. There are many, many more, and a lot of them reach the same levels of depth and character growth as the ones mentioned. Part of the fun of the Wandering Inn is discovering the characters as the series goes on and seeing how they grow and change throughout the story. As for some further thoughts on the characters, there is an astounding level of representation in the Wandering Inn. There is a whole subplot with LGBTQIA+ issues, with the characters involved receiving some much-needed positive representation. I applaud Pirate for writing about these issues in a positive light, with one line in particular standing out to many readers. This line is spoken by a dragon, one of the most powerful and wisest beings in Inverse, to a person who is in much need of hearing it. "Why do you hide your true form, girl? It shines truer than your false skin." The Wandering Inn, if you haven't noticed by now, is an extremely dense and deep work of fiction. It has an insane amount of world building that has gone into it. Each continent and even city has its own politics and culture, among other issues. It has legends and lore that are still being explored to this day. The amount of foreshadowing in this work is insane. There are plot threads that are merely mentioned in earlier volumes, such as Volume 1 and 2, that are just now being explored 4 years later, and even more plot threads are being woven in to this day. The characters in The Wandering Inn each deserve their own video. The amount of depth to each of the characters is immense, and the character arcs seen throughout the series are incredibly touching and resonant. The characters of The Wandering Inn feel real. They each have their own hopes, aspirations, dreams, and attitudes, and the way they interact with each other is simply sublime. One thing that I believe really needs to be mentioned is The Wandering Inn's representation of LGBTQIA+ individuals. There is a whole subplot surrounding the cultural ideals surrounding the LGBTQIA+ community and the stigma they face. There is a particular trans character that comes into the story around Volume 6, and without too many spoilers, is one of the most badass characters in the entire series. While some people may feel like this is just a Mary Sue, or a character that does not earn their power, this is completely false. This particular character is empowered through their own hard work and knowledge, and goes to show that anyone can be powerful and respected despite society's view of them. Now, as a disclaimer, I am not an LGBTQIA+ person, but I can recognize the effect that The Wandering Inn has on such individuals. However, The Wandering Inn does have its flaws. The writing of the novel is a bit rough. There are typos and plot holes that do occur, along with some characters either sharing names or being extremely similar. Pelt and Palt, for example. These issues, however, come with the territory of being a web serial. Pirate puts out 2 chapters a week, leaving very little time for editing or revisions. However, these very minor issues do not detract from the work as a whole, and I personally have not noticed or even minded many of these issues. In the end, I think The Wandering Inn has a bit of something for everyone, and anyone who reads it can gain something of value from it, be it entertainment, inspiration, or even much-needed representation. The Wandering Inn welcomes everyone, unless you're a jerk. So if this video piqued your interest at all, I highly recommend giving it a try. Just remember one simple rule: no killing goblins.